The Apache widow demanded. "Rancher, do you just want something from me like everyone else?" The desert was quiet in a way that felt heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Wide stretches of dry earth lay under the open sky, broken only by low hills and stubborn plants that had learned how to survive without mercy. This land had seen many stories, of loss, strength, and silence, and now it held the life of an Apache widow who lived at its edge. She lived in a small, simple home made from wood and earth, built with her own hands and the help of her late husband many years ago. Since his passing, she had remained there alone. The people nearby knew her as a quiet woman, strong and reserved. She did not speak much about her past, but her eyes carried stories that words could not easily explain. Loss had shaped her, but it had not broken her. Her days began early. Before the sun fully rose, she would step outside, feeling the cool air on her face. She worked with care, tending to small tasks that kept her life steady, gathering water, repairing what needed fixing, and watching over the land that had been part of her people for generations. This land was more than soil and stone to her. It was memory, identity, and belonging. Over the years, many outsiders had come through the area. Some were curious, some were desperate, others were simply passing by. Most of them looked at her with a certain kind of interest, one that made her uncomfortable. They asked questions that felt too personal, offered help that came with hidden expectations, or spoke to her as if she were something to be studied rather than respected. Each encounter added another layer to the wall she built around her heart. Not far from her home, a rancher had recently settled. He was new to the area, struggling to bring life back to a piece of land that had been neglected for years. His ranch sat on the other side of a dry creek, close enough that their paths could cross, yet far enough that they remained strangers. He worked long hours, fixing fences, caring for his animals, and learning how unforgiving the desert could be. The rancher had noticed the widow from a distance. He saw her moving calmly across the land, never rushing, never wasting energy. There was something steady about her presence that stood out in such a harsh place. Still, he kept his distance. He knew enough to understand that trust was not easily given, especially in lands filled with old wounds and long memories. One afternoon, a problem forced their worlds to touch. A broken section of fencing near the creek allowed his cattle to wander too close to her land. When the widow noticed, she felt the familiar mix of irritation and caution. Outsiders' problems had a way of becoming her problems. Still, she believed in addressing things directly. She walked toward the creek, her posture calm but firm. The rancher was already there, trying to guide his cattle back. When he saw her, he paused, unsure of what to say. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The desert wind moved between them, carrying dust and silence. She was the first to break it. Her voice was steady, not angry, but guarded. She pointed out the broken fence and the wandering animals. The rancher listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. He apologized without excuses and promised to fix the fence before sunset. There was no blame in his tone, only responsibility. That surprised her. She was used to people defending themselves, making promises they did not keep, or turning simple issues into arguments. This man did none of that. Still, she did not soften. Experience had taught her that first impressions could be misleading. As he worked on the fence, she stayed nearby, watching quietly. He did not try to start a conversation or ask questions about her life. He focused on his task, fixing the damage with care. When he was done, he stepped back and thanked her for pointing out the issue. He did not expect praise or forgiveness. Before leaving, he offered help if she ever needed it. The way he said it mattered. There was no pressure, no demand for gratitude, and just a simple offer. She nodded once, neither accepting nor rejecting it. As she walked back to her home, she found herself thinking about the encounter more than she expected. She reminded herself not to read too much into it. One kind action did not erase years of disappointment. Still, something about the way he listened stayed with her. That evening, as the sun painted the sky with deep orange and soft purple, she sat outside her home, watching the land grow quiet again. Memories came uninvited. She remembered times when people had approached her with smiles and kind words, only to reveal their true intentions later. They wanted land, favors, knowledge, or control. Rarely did they want understanding. Her husband had once told her that not all people were the same. Even if their actions often looked similar at first, she had believed him then. After losing him, belief had become harder. Across the creek, the rancher finished his work and looked toward the fading light. He felt the weight of starting over in a place that did not easily welcome newcomers. He knew that respect had to be earned slowly, especially here. He did not expect friendship or trust. He only hoped that, in time, his actions would speak for him. That night, both of them slept under the same wide sky, separated by land, history, and unspoken questions. Neither knew how their paths would continue to cross, but the first step had been taken, not through grand gestures or promises, but through quiet honesty. In the desert, small moments often carried great meaning, and though neither would admit it yet, something had shifted. Not trust, not hope, just the possibility that this story might unfold differently than all the ones before. The days after the broken fence passed quietly, but the silence between the widow and the rancher did not feel empty anymore. It felt watchful, like the land itself was waiting to see what would happen next. The widow returned to her routine, yet she noticed small changes around her. The creek bank looked cleaner. Loose boards near the shared edge of land were fixed. Nothing was said, but effort had been made. She did not go looking for him, and he did not come uninvited. That balance mattered to her. Respect was not shown by words alone, but by knowing when to step back. Still, life in the desert rarely stayed calm for long. One morning, dark clouds gathered far in the distance. Rain was rare, but when it came hard. The widow watched the sky with concern. Heavy rain could turn the dry creek into a rushing force, washing away soil and damaging the little she had built. She prepared as best she could, securing tools and checking the ground near her home. By afternoon, the storm arrived. Rain fell in strong sheets, soaking the land faster than it could absorb. The creek began to swell, its quiet path turning into fast-moving water. From her doorway, she saw part of the bank start to crumble. If it continued, it could cut into her land and reach the path she used every day. She acted quickly, gathering stones and placing them where the water pushed hardest. It was tiring work, and the rain made every step harder. Her hands shook from effort, but she did not stop. She had learned long ago that waiting for help often meant waiting too long. Across the creek, the rancher saw the same danger. He noticed the water rising and realized that if the bank collapsed on her side, it would soon affect his land too. More than that, he knew she was alone. Without thinking too much, he grabbed his coat and headed toward the creek. When she saw him approaching through the rain, her first feeling was anger, mixed with fear. She did not ask him to come. She did not want to owe anyone anything. Her face hardened as he came closer. He stopped a short distance away and raised his voice over the sound of rain, asking if he could help. He did not step closer without permission. That pause mattered. She hesitated, water dripping from her hair, heart pounding. Finally, she gave a short nod. They worked side by side in silence, lifting heavy stones, reinforcing weak spots, and redirecting water where they could. The rain soaked them both, but neither complained. The work was hard, but something about sharing the burden made it easier. When the storm finally passed, both were exhausted. The creek had settled, not back to calm, but no longer threatening. They stood there, breathing heavily, watching the water flow. It was then that the widow spoke again. Her voice was quiet, tired, but sharp with emotion that had been held back for years. She asked him the question that had lived in her mind since the day they met. Did he want something from her, like everyone else did? Her words were not accusing, but wounded. The rancher did not answer right away. He wiped rain from his face and looked at the ground. He understood that the question was not really about him. It was about all the people before him who had taken without caring. He said that he did not want her land, her help, or her gratitude. He only wanted peace with his neighbors and to live honestly. She listened, arms crossed, guarding herself. She told him how people had smiled at her while planning to gain from her loss, how offers of help often came with strings attached, how being alone had made her careful, even hard. He did not try to fix her pain with simple words. He only listened. When she finished, there was a long pause. He then said something simple. He said that if she ever felt uncomfortable, she could tell him to leave, and he would. He said trust was not something he expected. It was something he would earn, or not at all. Those words unsettled her more than any promise could have. She had heard promises before. She had rarely heard acceptance of boundaries. They parted soon after, each returning to their own side of the creek. That night, the widow sat by a small fire, thinking about the day. She felt tired in a way that went deeper than her muscles. Speaking the question out loud had stirred memories she usually kept quiet. She remembered her husband's laughter, his patience, the way he had believed in fairness even when the world failed him. She wondered what he would think of her now, so guarded, so careful. Would he tell her she was right to protect herself, or remind her that not all doors were meant to stay closed? On the other side, the rancher replayed the conversation in his mind. He realized how easily people could hurt others without meaning to, simply by wanting too much. He promised himself that if he stayed, he would do so with respect, even if it meant standing alone. In the days that followed, the land showed signs of healing. New green pushed through the wet soil. The creek left behind smooth stones where rough ground had been. Change, slow and quiet, had begun. And between two people shaped by loss and hard choices, a fragile understanding took root. Not yet trust, not yet friendship, but something real enough to grow if given time. The days after the storm felt different, even though nothing obvious had changed. The land was still dry in places, the sun still rose early, and the desert still demanded strength from anyone who lived there. Yet something quiet had shifted between the widow and the rancher. There were no promises made, no plans spoken out loud, but the space between them no longer felt sharp. The widow returned to her routine, but she noticed herself paying attention to small things. She saw that the fence near the creek stayed strong. She noticed that fallen branches were cleared from the shared path without anyone being asked. These actions were done quietly, without drawing attention. No one came to remind her of them or ask for thanks. At first, she told herself it meant nothing. She had learned to doubt good intentions. Still, a part of her watched carefully, not with suspicion alone, but with curiosity she had not felt in a long time. The rancher kept his distance, just as he had said he would. When he saw her, he greeted her with a nod, never forcing conversation. If she passed by without stopping, he let her go. If she paused, he waited. This patience was unfamiliar to her. Most people pushed, asked, or expected answers right away. One afternoon, she was struggling to move a heavy piece of wood near her home. Her strength was steady, but time had taken its toll, and the task was slow. The rancher noticed from a distance. He stopped where he was, unsure of what to do. He remembered her words and her need for space. Instead of walking over, he called out, asking if she wanted help. He did not move closer, did not assume. She looked at him, measured the moment, and after a pause, nodded. That simple choice surprised her. They lifted the wood together, saying very little. The task was done quickly. When it was over, he stepped back and returned to his work without lingering. No favor was mentioned, no debt was created. That night, the widow thought about how natural the moment had felt. There was no pressure, no discomfort. She wondered when helping had become something that always felt dangerous. The thought made her uneasy. As weeks passed, these small moments continued. Sometimes they worked near each other. Sometimes days passed without interaction at all. The space between them remained respectful, and slowly, that respect began to soften her guarded heart. She began to notice things about him that had nothing to do with what he could offer or take. She saw how carefully he treated his animals, never rushing them, never losing his patience. She noticed how he fixed things properly, not with shortcuts, but with care meant to last. These details mattered to her more than words ever could. One evening, she found him sitting near the creek, repairing a tool. She hesitated before speaking, then asked a simple question about his work. He answered without turning it into a story about himself. He spoke plainly, honestly. When she shared something about the land, he listened closely, as if her words held value. That moment marked another quiet change. For the first time, she spoke about her people's connection to the land. Not deeply, not emotionally, but enough to share meaning. He did not interrupt or correct her. He did not compare it to his own experiences. He simply listened. Later, alone again, she realized how rare that was. Still, her past did not disappear. Some nights memories returned uninvited. She remembered people who had smiled too easily, who had offered help and then asked for too much in return. She remembered how trust, once broken, left marks that never fully faded. On those nights, she reminded herself to stay careful. The rancher, too, faced his own struggles. His land was not easy to manage, and money was often tight. There were days when choosing himself would have been easier, when help from her knowledge of the land could have saved him time and effort, but he never asked. He remembered her question, and he respected it. One day a traveler stopped near the ranch asking about the widow and her land. The rancher felt uneasy. He gave only simple answers, never pointing, never explaining more than necessary. When the traveler left, the rancher felt he had done the right thing, even though no one would ever know. When the widow later heard about the traveler from someone else, she felt a quiet sense of relief she did not expect. It was not trust yet, but it was something close. As time passed, she began to allow herself small kindnesses. A shared cup of water on a hot day. A few words exchanged at sunset. Nothing deep, nothing rushed. Just moments that felt real. She noticed that she was less tired at the end of the day, not because the work was easier, but because her heart was no longer carrying everything alone. This realization frightened her. Depending on no one had been her way of surviving. Letting that wall weaken felt risky. One evening as they stood watching the sky darken, she spoke without planning to. She said that trust was hard for her, and silence followed. He nodded, saying he understood more than she might think. He did not ask her to explain. He did not ask for reassurance. That acceptance settled something inside her. As the season changed, the land reflected what was happening between them. New growth appeared where the storm had once caused damage. Paths became clearer. The creek flowed steadily, no longer threatening. Neither of them spoke of the future. They did not name what was forming. They simply allowed it to exist. For the widow, this was the hardest part, letting something grow without trying to control it or protect herself too tightly. For the rancher, it meant continuing to act with care, even when no reward was visible. And in the quiet rhythm of shared days and respectful distance, something stronger than words began to take shape. Not ownership, not need. Just understanding, built slowly, one choice at a time. The change that had grown quietly between them was tested when trouble arrived without warning. It did not come loudly or with clear signs at first. It arrived through small conversations, careful looks, and words that traveled faster than truth. She rarely went there, but sometimes it was necessary. As she walked through the familiar paths, she felt the old weight return. People watched her with curiosity, some with kindness, others with questions they never asked out loud. While waiting, she overheard two men speaking in low voices. They mentioned her land and the creek. One of them spoke about the rancher, saying he was smart, that he knew how valuable land near water could become. Another voice suggested that helping her was just a way to get closer, to gain her trust before making a move. The widow felt her chest tighten. She stood still, listening without being seen. Every word felt like a shadow from her past, stepping back into her present. She left the town with her supplies untouched, her thoughts heavy and restless. On her walk home, she tried to reason with herself. She told herself that people talked, that rumors grew easily, but memory was stronger than logic. She had been hurt before by stories that began exactly like this. Kindness first, gain later. By the time she reached her home, doubt had already planted itself deep inside her. That evening, she noticed the rancher working near the creek again. Normally, she would have felt calm seeing him there, steady and focused. Now every movement felt different. She wondered what his thoughts were. She wondered what he truly wanted. She did not approach him. Instead, she watched from a distance, her silence filled with questions she was afraid to ask. The rancher sensed the change almost immediately. When she stopped greeting him, when her answers grew short, when she no longer stayed even for a moment longer than needed, he knew something was wrong. But he did not push. He remembered her boundaries and respected them. Even as concern grew inside him. Days passed like this. The air between them grew tense, stretched thin by unspoken fear. Then came the offer. A land agent visited the rancher one afternoon. The man spoke openly, explaining that people were interested in buying land near the creek. There was talk of development, of money, of opportunity. If the rancher acted quickly, he could sell part of his land for a price that would ease his struggles and secure his future. The rancher listened carefully. The offer was tempting. Life had not been easy for him. He had debts. He had worries that kept him awake at night. This chance could change everything. But the land agent also mentioned the widow's property. He hinted that if the rancher helped convince her, the deal would move faster. He spoke casually, as if it were nothing more than business. The rancher felt something settle hard in his chest. He understood now why the widow had grown distant. The world had reached for her again, just as it always did. He told the agent he needed time to think. After the man left, the rancher stood alone for a long time, staring at the land that stretched quietly before him. He knew that whatever he chose next would define him. That evening, he made his decision. Instead of going to the widow to explain or defend himself, he did something else. He rode into town and spoke to people directly. He made it clear that he was not interested in selling land tied to the creek. He warned others that the land held meaning beyond money and that pushing would only cause harm. Word spread quickly. Some people were surprised. Others were disappointed. A few mocked him for turning away such a chance. He accepted it all without complaint. When the widow heard what he had done, she did not believe it at first. The news came through someone she trusted, someone who had no reason to lie. Still, disbelief lingered. Later that week, she saw the land agent leaving the area, his interest clearly gone. The pressure she had felt began to ease, though the fear inside her had not fully faded. That evening, she walked toward the creek, unsure of what she would say if she met the rancher. She found him sitting quietly, watching the water move over stones. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she asked him directly if the rumors were true. Her voice was calm, but beneath it lived years of pain and caution. He told her everything. He did not hide the offer. He did not deny the temptation. He explained his choice simply, without asking for approval or forgiveness. He said that taking something from her trust would cost more than any money could give. He said he would rather struggle honestly than succeed by hurting someone who had already lost too much. The widow listened, her eyes steady, her heart racing. She searched his face for signs of regret or expectation. She found none. For the first time since her husband's death, she felt something loosen inside her. Not all the way, not suddenly, but enough to breathe easier. She told him about what she had heard in town, about how fear had returned so quickly. She admitted that part of her had already decided to pull away again. He did not blame her. He said fear made sense when trust had been broken before. He thanked her for speaking instead of disappearing. That mattered more than he knew. The tension between them slowly began to fade. The land felt quieter again, as if it had been holding its breath, too. Still, this moment left its mark. The widow understood how fragile trust truly was. The rancher understood how easily the world could test his values. They did not promise anything to each other. They did not name what had been protected. They simply returned to their lives, changed by the choice that had been made. That night, the widow sat outside under the stars, thinking of how close she had come to closing her heart again. She realized that trust was not about never feeling fear. It was about what people did when fear appeared. Across the creek, the rancher lay awake, knowing he had chosen the harder path. But for the first time in a long while, that path felt right. The test had passed, but the story was not finished, and both of them knew that whatever came next would be shaped by this moment, when choice mattered more than gain, and action spoke louder than any promise ever could. The land slowly settled into a new rhythm after everything that had happened. Nothing looked very different on the surface. The creek still flowed its familiar path. The hills still changed color with the light. But for the widow and the rancher, something deep inside had shifted into place. They did not suddenly become close, and they did not speak about feelings or futures. Instead, life continued in quiet, steady ways. That was how both of them understood trust best, not as a promise spoken once, but as something proven again and again through ordinary days. The widow felt lighter than she had in years, not because her past was gone, but because it no longer ruled every choice she made. She still worked alone most days, still valued her independence, still guarded what mattered to her, but now that guarding felt calmer, not sharp. She no longer expected harm in every kind act. She noticed herself sleeping better. Her mornings felt less heavy. Even the silence around her home felt different, less lonely, more peaceful. The rancher, too, felt the change. He still faced struggles. His work was hard, and his future was never certain. But he carried himself differently now. He knew who he was and what he stood for. He had chosen honesty when it cost him, and that choice stayed with him, giving him quiet strength. Over time, their shared moments became more natural. They spoke more freely, though never too much. They shared simple stories. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Sometimes they laughed softly at small things, surprised by the sound. One afternoon, the widow invited him to sit near her home while she prepared a simple meal. It was not a grand invitation. She did not explain it or dress it up with meaning, but to him, it meant everything. They sat under the open sky, eating slowly, watching the land stretch out before them. No one asked for anything. No one felt owed. As the sun lowered, the widow spoke words she had carried for a long time. She told him that when she had asked her question, whether he wanted something from her like everyone else, it came from years of being seen as something to take from, not someone to stand beside. He listened quietly, as he always did. She told him that his answer had not come from words, but from what he had given up without being asked. She said that choice had shown her something she had nearly forgotten, that respect could exist without control. He did not respond with big statements. He simply said that she deserved peace, whether he was part of her life or not. Those words stayed with her long after the evening ended. The seasons began to change. The heat softened. The air carried hints of cool nights. The land showed signs of rest and renewal. Paths grew clearer. Plants returned where the storm had once damaged the ground. The widow found herself sharing knowledge of the land when it mattered, not as a favor, but as a shared responsibility. The rancher accepted it carefully, never taking more than was offered, never assuming access. Their lives remained separate, yet connected by respect. One day, a small crisis arose when an animal was injured near the creek. Without hesitation, they worked together to help it, calm and focused. When the task was done, they stood quietly, understanding each other without needing to speak. That moment made the widow realize something important. She was no longer bracing herself. She was present. Later that evening, as stars filled the sky, she stood outside her home and felt something she had not allowed herself to feel since her husband's passing, gratitude without pain attached to it. She understood then that healing did not mean forgetting loss. It meant learning how to live without fear shaping every step. Across the creek, the rancher looked toward her land and felt a deep sense of peace. He did not feel proud in a loud way. He felt steady. He had not rescued anyone. He had not claimed anything. He had simply chosen to be decent again and again. That choice had changed more than just his relationship with her. It had changed how he saw himself. As time passed, people in the area noticed the quiet harmony between the two lands. There were no fences built higher than needed, no conflicts, no stories of disputes, just balance. The widow became known not as someone to approach with demands, but as someone to respect. The rancher became known as a man who valued fairness over profit. Others sought that reputation, but it followed them anyway. One evening, standing together near the creek, the widow finally spoke the truth she had been holding. She said that she no longer believed everyone wanted something from her, not because people had changed, but because she had learned how to see intentions clearly and how to walk away when respect was missing. She said that his actions had reminded her that dignity could be shared without being taken. The rancher nodded, knowing that was the greatest answer he could have hoped for. They stood there in silence as the water moved gently past, carrying no threat, only reflection. Their story did not end with promises or declarations. It ended with something quieter and stronger. Mutual respect, earned trust, and the understanding that sometimes the most powerful answer to a painful question is a life lived with integrity. And under the wide desert sky, two people who had both lost much found something rare. Not ownership, not need, but peace.